What's good, folks? It's your boy Isaac, aka Polo, aka Young Polo, and this is another edition of Polo Talk Sports, where it's going to consist of your boy Polo talking sports. Crazy how that works. Now, when it comes to all things sports, I am an expert. This is going to be another edition of Polo's Crazy Takes, and I'm going to call this one The Last Westbrook Defender. Now, basically, I'm going to be combating all the Westbrook critics, saying obviously he's a stat chaser, he cares more about stats than winning, and I'm really going to just destroy all those arguments. And once you watch this video, if you don't have a different opinion of Westbrook and on his legacy and on his career, then I don't know what to tell you, because I'm about to change a couple minds with this one. Now, the first point of emphasis is that a lot of great players, even though Westbrook is considered the most troublesome superstar to work with, the hardest star to mesh with, a lot of great players have had their best seasons alongside Russell Westbrook. Starting with Paul George, he was an MVP finalist in 2018-19 season, and Russell Westbrook really did a lot to rekindle and save his career. Obviously, we know he was a dog back in Indiana on the Pacers, but he had that gruesome injury, and he really wasn't the same. No one really considered him a top player until he got back to OKC and finished in the top three MVP voting 2018-19 at OKC. Who was right alongside him? Russell Westbrook. Kevin Durant. Now, obviously, we know he's the Kevin Durant of today. When he got to the Warriors, he actually became a winner, got some finals MVPs under his belt. But he only has one league MVP in the year 2013-14, league MVP on Oklahoma City Thunder. Who was right there alongside him? Russell Westbrook. And Bradley Beal. All right, Bradley Beal just last year had averaged 31.3 points a game, finished second in the scoring title, and that's the best season of his career. And honestly, him being hurt this year, him being in his prime currently, the way his career is gonna project out, I think he's probably gonna go to a contender or go to a team where he can partner with more superstars. So he's probably not gonna see that same scoring output ever again. And who was right alongside him when he averaged the most points of his career? Russell Westbrook. Now, next up, I'm going to run through all the Oklahoma City playoff runs for the last couple of years that Westbrook was a part of. And even though Westbrook gets all the blame, I'll tell you why he's not to blame for any of these playoff losses or any of the times when he had championship contending talent on his team and they came up short. Even though he gets all the blame, I'm going to explain to you why it's not always his fault. Now, first of all, 2018-19 Oklahoma City, they lost in the first round to the Trailblazers 4-1. This is the one time where I do blame Westbrook. I do think it was his fault that the series wasn't more interesting and that they lost. He wasn't that good on the defensive end, and Dame was really just giving it to him. I'm not even going to hold you. Obviously, we know Westbrook's defense has fallen off over the years, but Dame was just cooking him over and over again. Even though Paul George was the one defending Dame when Dame called game for that infamous shot, Paul George did have a better series than Westbrook. He had pretty good scoring, a good series scoring wise a couple times throughout this series, so I wouldn't blame him. But the year before, Oklahoma City 2017-18, they lost to the Jazz in the first round 4-2. Now, this series was completely Paul George's fault. He flamed out. He had a couple of bad games in the series. In the final game, Game 6, when they lost, he just flamed out. I think he only finished with 4 points. He shot terrible for the field, and he was just terrible. I don't know what type of mental funk he was in. Russell Westbrook he put up his numbers, probably averaged about a 30-point triple-double, but obviously on the defensive end, he wasn't that good. But we know the Jazz that year and even till now, they have a lot of shooters. They could space the floor well. So that wasn't a series that you were really going to win with your defense. You had to match them for scoring. And with Paul George not holding up his end of the bargain, that's a lot harder to do. Now, flashback to the year before, Oklahoma City Thunder, 2016-17 playoffs, 4-1 loss to the Rockets, and although it was just James Harden and a bunch of shooters, a bunch of average Joes, Russell Westbrook also didn't have any talent on that team, or not a lot. I shouldn't say any. He did have Victor Oladipo, but that's not Indiana Pacers Oladipo. Steven Adams, we know he's an enforcer, but he's not going to put up crazy numbers. And Jeremy Grant, they had him before anyone even knew who he was. That's before he got to Denver and became a max contract caliber player. Flashback to the year before, 2015-16. Now, this is the infamous loss to the Warriors. They were up 3-1 in the conference finals, still ended up losing. And obviously, Game 6 and Game 7, Clay had a lot to do with that. But everyone says this was when KD realized that he couldn't win with Westbrook. And people's main argument is that Westbrook is so turnover prone. But in this series and a lot of them before them, KD averaged just under 4 turnovers a game, and Westbrook averaged just over 4 turnovers a game. Let me walk you through these numbers. So, during the 2015-16 playoff run, KD averaged 28.4 points a game, 7 rebounds a game, 3.3 assists, 3.6 turnovers. Westbrook averaged 26 points a game, 7 rebounds, 11 assists, and 4.3 turnovers. And now Westbrook is averaging double-digit assists or damn near double-digit assists in all of these playoff runs, and only just over 4 turnovers, which the ratio for assist to turnover isn't terrible. And in the playoffs, when it matters, him and KD are basically turning the ball over at the same rate, but Westbrook is scoring at almost as good a rate and actually getting his teammates involved with all these assists, yet they're saying Westbrook is the reason he turns the ball over too much. But that doesn't make any sense when him and KD both turn the ball over at damn near the same rate. Obviously, Westbrook averaged about a turnover more per game, but he also averaged double-digit assists compared to KD's 3 assists in all these playoff series, where KD's only job and his only role in the offense is to score. You should not average just as much turnovers as the point guard, whose job is to get others involved. So there's going to be tip passes. Players are going to drop passes here and there. That's going to add up to some turnovers. Now, let me highlight the Warriors series specifically. So Westbrook was averaging, he had 4 steals a game, about 31 turnovers over 7 games. So that's 4 turnovers a game, 26.7 points, 7 rebounds, 11.3 assists a game. And KD was averaging 30 points a game, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists a game. And he had 25 total turnovers over that 7-game series. So over a 7-game series, Westbrook only turned the ball over 6 more times than KD, but Westbrook also averaged way more assists, so he's getting everyone involved. Yet the huge argument is that Westbrook is too turnover prone, so you can't win with him. When KD was turning the ball over at about the same ratio, which is crazy to me. I didn't even know this before I looked up these stats, but this is ridiculous. This makes me hate KD even that much more. How could you say you can't win with someone because of the turnovers when you're doing the same thing? You're averaging damn near the same number of turnovers a game, and your job is just to score the ball. So when are you really turning the ball over? And let's go to the year before, 2013-14. Obviously, 2014-15, they missed the playoffs because KD got hurt that season. Now, they lost to the Spurs, 4-2 in the Western Conference Finals. Westbrook averaged 26.7 points a game, 7 rebounds, 8 assists, 4.4 turnovers. KD averaged 29.6 points a game, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3.8 turnovers. So that's right there, just about 4 turnovers for both of them. Now, let's go to the next series, the year before, 2012-13. Oklahoma City lost to the Grizzlies 4-1 in the second round. Westbrook got hurt in the first round from the Rockets. Pat Beverly injured him. That's why he hates Patrick Beverly so much. But KD, just on his own. He also had Serge Ibaka. He had Darren Collison. Who else was on that team? I think Steven Adams. And they had a pretty good team still, but he couldn't get over the hump of the Grizzlies. Really? Kevin Durant. Obviously, he was a little younger, 2012-13 series, but I just think if you're as great as a player as Kevin Durant is, he should have been able to get back to the conference finals and at least beat the Grizzlies. Now, the year before, 2011-2012, this is when they went to the finals. I didn't include any stats because they went to the finals and lost to the Heat. So you could establish blame to Westbrook or KD, but honestly, going to the finals and losing to the LeBron Heat, that's a good season. They achieved right about where they should be that season, especially because they were on the projection to becoming a championship team. Now, 2010-2011 is when they lost to the Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals 4-1. Obviously, the Mavericks went on to win their championship, so there's no shame in that, really. And they were a really young team in 2010-2011. Westbrook and KD specifically, and also Harden. They were all very young players, so I can't hold that against them. But that's pretty much all I have for this argument. But this is ridiculous. So KD left Westbrook because he couldn't win with him because he's too turnover prone. Yet throughout every single playoff series, they averaged just about the same number of turnovers, and Westbrook averaged way more assists. So the assist to turnover ratio for Kevin Durant was damn near 1-1, where Westbrook was always at least 2-1 in that department. This is crazy. This is really, I don't even know how people could blame Westbrook, and no one ever thinks to bring up the numbers, and no one ever thinks to look up the stats. They just always say he's a stat chaser. He doesn't care about winning. When I just walked you through players having their best season with Westbrook and reasons why, if you're going to blame Westbrook for any of their losses at OKC, KD is just as much to blame. And one thing I will say is that Westbrook and KD would average just about the same number of shots. There was even a series where Westbrook did average more, a playoff run where Westbrook averaged more shots per game than Kevin Durant. And so I can't see the argument that KD says it's not because of the turnovers, it's because he shoots the ball too much. And Kevin Durant was obviously the more efficient scorer. But I honestly think Kevin Durant being as passive-aggressive as he was, you guys saw this firsthand when he was on the Warriors. Everyone thought he was going to stay forever, but he decided to just up and leave because he got in his feelings because they love Steph more than him. He was definitely super passive-aggressive about it and couldn't just go up to Westbrook and go up to the coach and say, we need to drop more plays for me shooting and less plays for Westbrook shooting. I'm pretty sure Westbrook wouldn't have had an issue with that, especially because he wants to win a championship just as bad as KD. But I guess KD wanted to prove that he was more of a winner, so he just up and left the whole team when they were right there knocking on the door for a championship year after year. This concludes my video. Let me know what you think. And all the Westbrook haters, man, they gonna eat this one. You better watch this video and check the stats for yourself.